This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we have as our guest my good friend Tommy Gallion, who is a famous Montgomery lawyer and now a famous author, but he's back for a return visit. We had him on a couple weeks ago, and we had the best time talking about his book. And I'm going to hold it up for the camera for anybody to see. Shadow Government, Southern Style, Thomas T. Gallion III, a saga of political corruption from D.C. to Dixie. And folks, I read this book on a Sunday afternoon. It's not a real thick book, but it is a most vivid and great story of Alabama political history, and I just loved it. Of course, I love Alabama political history, but also Tommy has been, and his family have been around Montgomery and government and politics and business stuff for generations. His daddy and his wife's family, and his wife's family from the Hill, originally Hill family here in Montgomery, but it's just steeped in Montgomery. Those of y'all who are from Montgomery will find some of the inside stuff interesting. I find all the state politics. He talks about past governors, but one thing I want to start this one off with, not many of us living know the story of Phoenix City. Not many folks still living know the story of Phoenix City, Alabama, with Columbus, Georgia during the post-World War II era. Tommy remembers it very, very well and documents it as a little boy. He saw it through his daddy's eyes. His daddy was Attorney General of Alabama and helped clean up that Phoenix City mess with Crack Hanna and some other famous people in that era. But some of y'all may have read it, but Tommy knew it. Let's start off talking about that if you don't mind today, Tommy, about the Phoenix City. Tell people the whole story about how it was based in Columbus, Georgia, and what you saw as a boy and what you know. You know the whole story.
Well, as I stated in my book, my dad got a call. We were in Dallas, Texas, visiting my grandmother, and that Albert Patterson had been assassinated. Albert Patterson had won the election and against a guy named Red Lee Porter, who was the gambling syndicates.
But let's tell our viewers so they'll know what we're talking about. Phoenix City was the sin capital of the world, and Albert Patterson had run for Attorney General of Alabama because this whole state of Alabama was embarrassed about the situation.
Right.
To clean up Phoenix City.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how bold they were.
Well, and people don't understand that Phoenix City was the #1 racketeering, prostitution, dope, gambling city in the United States of America. And you say, well, why? It's very simple. You could get a 9-iron and hit it over the river and hit Fort Benning. So one of the strange things, I drove my dad to keep him up, and we came into Phoenix City. And I mean, it was like Dante's Inferno. I mean, if hell looks like this.
You were a little bitty boy, wasn't you?
I was 11 years old. I have a.
Did they actually have houses of prostitution around the main street?
Oh, good God.
Gambling places?
Oh, it was open. And so anyway, and they had the prostitutes out, their nightgowns, and Crack Hanna got in the guard. They drug the slot machines and everything out and had poured gas and set them on fire. So I went in and it looked like hell. So we were there, and my dad got the highway patrolman to check me in over across the river in Columbus in a hotel. Well, the next day, Crack Hanna and Daddy and the whole group.
Now you got a sister too, hadn't you?
Yeah, Mallory.
Is she older than you or younger?
No, she's younger. She's
what were they
3.
doing with her at that time?
She was with my mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your dad let him go with you over there?
Yeah, because he needed somebody to keep him awake, you know. So anyway, the next day they started dragging the river to find the weapon because Albert Patterson's law office backed up to the river, as did all the gambling houses. And so they gave up after about 8 hours because they found like over 1,000 guns, knives, but they found skeletons where if these guys didn't pay their prostitute or pay their gambling debt, they just kill them and roll them out the back door. So they never found a weapon. But Cy Garrett, who was Attorney General, and as I mentioned this, I tie all this in to the present Indian gambling and Laura Garrett Canary, his niece of first cousin, something I don't know. From
they all can. Uriah,
yeah,
Monroe County.
Yeah, that's right, Monroe County. And a very good family down there. You know, Cy was a little off his rocker. In fact, he ended up in a mental institution.
Well, he claimed to be mentally ill so he wouldn't go to jail, wasn't
That's correct.
he?
But he set it up, and Arch Farrell was the DA, and he was in on it. All had to do with gambling. And my book ties that in the 50s to what's been going on with the Indian gambling, and Bob Teflon Riley, as I called him, who happened to have been a classmate of mine at Alabama. I didn't know him well, but anyway. And Laura Canary was put there because she married Bill Canary. Bill Canary was with Abernoff Scanlon as a lobbyist in Washington. Both Abernoff and Scanlon went to the pen, and he escaped to Alabama. I don't know how, but he did. But I do know how. The one who masterminded all of this, the prosecution of Siegmund, the gambling, the whole 9 yards, is who George Bush called Turd Blossom.
Karl Rove.
Karl Rove. And I put in my revised edition, Steve, that's coming out, at the end of the chapter on Karl Rove, and I, trying to be witty, I guess, and maybe hit below the belt, I said I'd rather go snorkeling in a septic tank than be in the same room with Karl Rove.
You know, one of the funniest things in your book is you saw him riding down a bicycle down in on 38. Y'all live at 38, have a house in 38?
Yeah.
What he looked like? He is kind of a weird looking guy.
Well, he looked like a combination of Yogi Bear and Humpty Dumpty, and I don't know how. Well, I'm not.
He lives down there at 38.
No, he got his third divorce. She left him.
Oh,
he's been married 3 times.
So but he was married to somebody living down there at 38, wasn't he?
Well, no, she was from there. They bought a house in Rosemary Beach, and I'd do my daily walk. I'm right down the road, and I'd met him before. I met him when he came and ran Perry Hooper's campaign, Judge Hooper. And when I met him, I didn't like him because all he wanted to do is dig up dirt on somebody and then manufacture dirt. And I really think he's probably one of the most evil people that have ever hit the political scene. His idea, like with Siegmund, he tried to get, and I've got that, all this is documented in part in the revised edition.
And you also are quick to say, I wish they'd sue me so I could get them under oath.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're not going to sue me. Doug Jones either, and I got Doug Jones by the Yang. I mean, you know, this guy was a law partner of mine, and I later found out he was planted there by his best friend, Rob Riley. And to get...
This is Doug Jones, the big Democrat who's running for the U.S. Senate right now.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, there's nothing.
He was planning your law firm years ago by Bob Riley's son.
Yeah, to get stuff on Milton McGregor, who was one of our biggest clients, one of my closest friends. And Milton never did anything.
And both of them were Democrats.
Well, Doug Jones was a Democrat, but Rob Riley. Oh, you mean Milton? Yeah, they didn't care.
I didn't care.
Everything the Rileys did was to make money. I have a retired FBI agent. I'm not going to call his name. When Bob Riley came in as governor, he had a deficit of $280,000.
His campaign account.
Yeah, in net worth across the board.
His personal net worth.
Well, yeah, it's what he said. They did a research on him, and the amazing thing is, this guy. Anyway, he told me that they had never. He was in Birmingham. He had never seen, and the FBI had never seen such a corrupt governor in the history of the state. He came out, he and his family, allegedly, worth over $31 million. Now, that's hell to do on a $140,000 a year salary, but they managed to do it. But he was protected by guess who? Karl Rove. I mean, not only Karl Rove, but Karl Rove's lawyer, Eric Holder, the United States Attorney General. And so they kept Laura Canary on 2.5 years.
I'm glad you brought that out because I thought the same thing when they came after Milton McGregor. I thought, well, isn't this strange that the irony of this thing is that as soon having followed politics all my life, as soon as a president wins the presidency, they change the U.S. attorney
right away,
and all over the country. That's one of the plum political appointments.
That's right.
This man stayed here in a Democratic administration,
Well,
kept that girl, Lara Canary.
Well, yeah, and
Because of Bill Canary and that sort of thing.
it's such a labyrinth. You know, one of my favorite ancient writers, Sir Walter Scott, had a lot of people attribute this to Shakespeare, but Sir Walter Scott had a great quote you've heard a million times. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when at first we practice to deceive. Well, I've untangled that damn web, and I found a lot of black widow spiders in it. And when Karl Rove, the lawyer, is Eric Holder, when Trump says the swamp, it's the most unbelievable corrupt swamp in this country that you'll ever find. Democrats and Republicans. That's why my book gets, I guess, a little more interesting, because I get them all.
You really do?
Yeah, I don't leave. In fact, in this last one I told you a minute ago, I threw a grenade to expose them, and this revised edition coming out the first week in October is a Scud missile. I mean, everybody said you need to get a bodyguard. I said, well, you know, hell, I've been doing stuff like this all of my life. I haven't been killed yet. But it's going to shock. And the number one person, Don Sugerman, of course, didn't deserve what he got. But the most interesting part that I uncovered in this investigation, Steve, is what they did to Richard Scrushy to take away his company. He had never met Don Sugerman. He had never given him a penny. And they made it all up. In fact, the FBI and the two prosecutors at the Justice Department told Scrushy that if he would follow their script and lie, they'd cut him loose. And he said, well, I'm not going to go under oath and perjure myself. And they said, well, you're going to spend years in prison.
That's in your book, too.
Yeah, well, you wait till the revised edition. Now, let's talk about, if you don't mind.
You know what I'm so surprised at is that they openly did that, and it was taped.
Yeah.
I mean, they caught him.
Caught him.
I mean, the FBI guy was trying to say.
Well, they did the same thing to Nick Bailey. Karl Rove, always, something's wrong with him. You know, I hope he sues me. I can take his deposition. But he's got some hang-up with sex or something, because he always looks, when Ann Richardson was governor of Texas and George Bush 43 ran against her, he put out all these pamphlets that she was a lesbian. And it worked. And you remember the same thing Gerald Wallace did to Albert Brewer, dropped those funny books with her Albert's sweet daughter was a co-ed at Auburn having sex with some black guy. You know, but that's Karl Rove.
Right.
And Karl Rove orchestrated this whole thing, everything, with to put Scrushy and Sugerman in jail. But Scrushy, they thought they would show a big rich guy that built, because Scrushy grew up in South Montgomery County on a farm and then moved to Selma. He built that company from nothing. And now he's sitting there with nothing.
Does he live out in Texas?
Yeah, he lives in Houston. And like I said, I'd only met him one other time. And when I started looking, I said, something is peculiar here. I mean, this doesn't make sense. Why?
Where did he go to federal prison? Where did they put him in federal prison? Out in Texas?
Out in Texas.
That's why he's out there.
Yeah. But he missed the marriage of his youngest daughter and the birth of a granddaughter. And when I got through with all my research, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I have never seen the corrupt. They had this Judge Horn, and I'm not supposed to say anything about judges, so I'll skip it. He's dead now. But he was controlled by a big law firm. Rob Campbell, who is Riley's son-in-law, was a partner in the firm. And Doug Jones and Rob Riley and Rob Campbell sued Scrushy. And they set it up to get him prosecuted where he couldn't defend himself in the suit. He wasn't even allowed to attend his own lawsuit. And the judge did away with the jury, let him fly in and testify for 1 hour. He never got to see any witnesses. and they took away his company he had built from scratch. And the law firm, from what I have researched and found, the day Scrushy went off, they planted a lawyer out there, and they have billed, according to SEC filings, close to what I've seen, $100 million. And it's so disgraceful. And when you think about it, politicians set themselves up. Sigerman, you know, but to put him in jail is horrible. And he didn't do any more than every other person. Probably took a watch and a motorcycle, some crap like that. Bob Riley, I'm surprised he didn't lasso and drag the Capitol Dome off to Clay County, but he got everything else. But to put a man in prison who'd done nothing and destroy his life, take away his, even took, in Scrushy's, his wife had a pajama company. She's very smart, both of them are very religious. Richard Scrushy, when I got to know him, which was I met him for the first time on October the 23rd, 2 years ago. He's never had a drink, never smoked a cigarette.
His whole life.
And he and his wife are devout Christians, and it's really amazing he hung on to his faith. But that's kind of what part 2 is about, because I bring all the gambling left over, and it's funny how, you know, the same gene pools, the old apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And they set it up, and I'll say one thing, they were smart. Bob Riley made sure that he controlled every prosecutor, from the U.S. Attorney to the Attorney General. And he did it, and they wouldn't touch him because he would, hell, you know, Troy King tried to one time, and they subpoenaed him for getting tickets at Laurel Canary to an Auburn football game or some crap like that. But and then when they left, when Jeff Sessions, who I say is one of the missing 7 dwarfs, I have no use for him either, because he set up my friend John Smith, and I tried that case and we won, but totally destroyed John's life. I mean, he was a deacon at First.
Who was John Smith now?
John Smith was head of ADEM investigating Fobbs landfill, and it was horrible. And so to get rid of him, they fired him, Fobb did, and then he filed a lawsuit against him for unlawful filing concerning his landfill. And Jeff Sessions went and indicted him for something they didn't know. I tried the case. I had George Beck with me, and I gave the opening argument. Sessions came in, and he had his entourage with him, who, you know, he would come about your waist if you're as tall as you are. I couldn't even see him. I saw his little head bobbing up.
Was this when he was a U.S. Senator?
He was State Attorney General. And anyway.
He was State Attorney General then.
Yeah. And so I gave the opening argument, laid it on him. And he had about 4 or 5 special lawyers and crap with him. I never saw him again. He vanished. And the jury fortunately found John Smith, who was head of ADEM until he fired him, not guilty on all 36 charges. And we had a Republican committee woman on that jury. And
was it here in Montgomery?
Yeah, it was before Judge Price. And at the end, the foreman of the jury asked to investigate Jeff Sessions and Fobb James, because he was so horrible. I mean, he was on the board of trustees of West Alabama University, and his wife headed the District Attorney Association for over 30 years, and they destroyed his family. They don't care. These people will put you in prison and ruin your life to protect themselves. And so that's what the book's about, and the revision is going to tie it more together.
Tommy, you know, there's been always this belief. We all know that Riley took advantage, especially of the relationship he had with the Indian casinos, to make money, and he lobbies for them now, and so it's pretty transparent. And also industries he brought here, he lobbies for them. There's always been this rumor, even in recent years, that Bob Riley still has a lot of influence in state government. I don't necessarily buy that anymore. I think it's dwindled a little bit. I think he makes money as a lobbyist, But I don't think he controls the state Supreme Court or things that people say, oh, he controls. Do you still think he has a lot of influence from his law? Or he's not a lawyer,
Not now.
I don't know either.
No,
I think it's
no,
gone.
no. He did before.
About 5 years ago, I think it dwindled down, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. But now, when Bob Riley, there's and I was one that helped Mel Cooper when he was the first ethics commissioner, retired colonel from Maxwell. I helped him write the Alabama ethics law, and then it got amended to make it where you can do what you want to, just don't bother us with it.
Yeah.
But they had the guy that ran it who was controlled by Riley. Now they've got Judge Albritton's son, who's a fine young man from originally from Andalusia.
Great legal family down there.
Great legal family, and honest as the day is long. And Judge Price is chairman.
Well,
of
actually,
ethics.
Albritton is on the U.S. federal judge.
Yes, yeah, he's federal judge. He's
retired,
senior status, and but it's so horrible. The law is perfectly clear that once you leave an elected office, you can't do business with anybody for 2 years.
Right.
Before he even walked out the door, he had 4 or 5 clients that he had personally got millions of dollars from, that big company down in
Mobile.
Shipping company in Mobile.
I knew that one.
And
Austin, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's made millions. Now, when the present governor went in, there was strong rumor that that he was controlling her. I do know that Minda was up there a great deal of the time, but I think to her credit, she probably saw through it, and I think I had a little bit to do with that. But anyway, so I don't think he has the influence now.
I don't think he has influence with her. He may have at one time.
Well, why would you need influence? I imagine the guy's worth between $30 and $40 million, he and his family. But, and they made a ton on taking Scrushy's company away.
Yeah.
And he and his, see, nobody understood but me and Bill Slaughter, my law partner, that Doug Jones and Rob Riley were best friends. One a Democrat, one a Republican, and they set everything up to make money. Doug Jones charged Don Sigmund $325,000 for the federal case in Birmingham. They indicted, tried to convict Sigmund and Scrushy in 2 cases in Birmingham, and the juries found them not guilty, so they found a judge and a prosecutor down here, and just, it should have been res judicata, double jeopardy, but it, when you got the judge with you, there's not a hell of a lot you can do. But the $325,000, Doug Jones was disqualified by the federal judge in Birmingham for a conflict of interest. I imagine he probably had maybe $5,000, possibly $10,000 in legal work. And this is what's so interesting. Then Sigmund hired 2 good lawyers, real good lawyers, Joe Espy and Bobby Siegel here.
He
was dependent on Doug Jones to help him because he had been his lawyer before. So Doug Jones appears in his office and said, look, I'm going to represent Nick Bailey. Well, Nick Bailey was the guy who ended up sending him to prison by lying. And by the way, I've got an affidavit in there that's going to stun the state. I can prove that the feds made Nick Bailey lie on the oath. Well, so he says, I'm representing Nick Bailey. Well, Sigmund, you know, Sigmund is a smart guy, but he's a politician. He thinks everybody likes him. He's eaten up with naivete, in my opinion. I told him that to his face, and he knows I was a Republican and I would support him, although I like him, you know. So anyway, Doug Jones asked Sigmund for a waiver of a conflict of interest. And I was talking to Sigmund, and I said, surely to God you didn't give him a waiver. He said, no. And I said, well, let me tell you what, he was working on the inside against you. His own client, he had, and I said, by the way, did he give any of $325,000? He had to scrape, borrow from his brother to get that fee up. He said, are you kidding me? Quote. Now, and I look into this, and it was Nick Bailey. So, of course, Doug Jones says, oh, it's a lie, he didn't do it. I've got an affidavit from Nick Bailey's best friend, who's very close to Nick Bailey's brother. And he says that Nick Bailey has told him that the statute of limitations runs the end of this month on perjury. The feds have said if he says what they got him to do, that they're going to indict him on perjury.
That who, Jones?
No, Nick Bailey. And well, he'd already perjured himself, but he's going to say he lied when he perjured himself that they got him to do. I mean, it's so damn crooked that it's sickening, to be honest with you. So anyway, I have an affidavit from the best friend where Doug Jones has Nick Bailey's criminal file and won't give it back. Now, I think old Nick's going to appear. He's living in Puerto Rico or something. Hopefully at the end of this month. But I do know this. I do know I can prove that Nick Bailey put his own, that Doug Jones put his own client, Don Siegelman, in prison.
Isn't that something?
And that, to me, is about the worst thing you do. Now, he's going to lie, and he's going to say, he's already told somebody in Shelby's office who, the secretary was reading my book, and old Art Parker called me dying laughing one Sunday. He said she was sitting there and Doug Jones came into Shelby's office, and he said, have you read Tommy Gallion's book? He's a lying son of a bitch. And so that just gave me more juice. And so I'm saying, please sue me. I'll pay the filing fee.
I love it.
But, I ain't going to hear from him. Well, I hope I do. You don't ever know.
No. Tommy, our time's up. We
Okay.
had the best time doing it. Y'all need to read this book if you like anything about Montgomery or Alabama politics. This is the inside story, but it's also got some great personal stuff. Tommy's got some epilogue of some great stories of his personal life. He's had a wonderful life here in Montgomery and knows a lot about Alabama politics, a lot of inside stuff. And we thank you for being with us tonight, and we thank you viewers for watching. We'll have Tom back on again, and hope you'll tune again next week for Alabama politics. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Steve.